Welcome, everyone, to the latest edition of the AI Guides podcast. And today I'm joined by Jen, as always. Hi, Jen. And our guest is Kris McMenamin of the McMenamin Consulting Group. So, Kris,
Hi.
and very happy to have you here. And Jen, why don't you start off?
Sure thing. Yeah. So just to kick things off, we'd love to hear a bit about your story. We know you have had experiencing consulting for the Big Four, and then we'd like to hear how you got into consulting, what led you to start your own consulting shop, all of those exciting things.
Excellent. So I've only ever been a consultant as a grown-up. I came out of college and was looking to figure out what I wanted to do and got involved in some human interaction kind of work. So people to interfacing with machines, and thought I was going to stick with that as an occupation, and ultimately took a broader perspective, more of a view of people within their larger ecosystem. Went back and got my MBA, landed at Coopers and Lybrand, which became PwC, which became IBM. And it was at that point that I said, maybe there's an opportunity for me to start my own thing. So I started a business with two other women, ran it successfully for about 11 years, I guess. And then almost 7 years ago, I started out on my own. And I think the reason I left the bigs was that I was really looking to shape my own destiny. I really wanted to be involved in solving problems on the ground. And I was feeling pressure at the large organization to take a different role, to sort of abstract myself from client delivery. And that's where I have my passion. So that's where I have leaned in. Even as my own business owner, I actually still deliver work. I've got people around me that support my projects as well. But I think I would be sad if I ever had to step away from client delivery. So that's why I stepped into my own thing.
Super. And so you talked about helping clients. Can you tell us who are some of your clients and why is it that they're coming to see Kris?
I specialize in what I describe as business transformation, which is the concept of thinking about people and process when you're making a larger transformation. Typically, that's been technology driven. So, clients implementing a new system, or they're thinking about what their organization needs to be more efficient, or perhaps they're trying to figure out what they want to be when they grow up. They want to create a strategic direction. So, we focus on the people process side of that equation. And we know enough about technology to be a little dangerous, but we understand it as an enabler, as something one is to implement, true effectiveness or efficiency. And that's why clients come. They're looking for, how do I make my organization more effective? How do I become more efficient? How do I take advantage of all this cool stuff that's happening in the real world and actually improve my own operation? I tend to focus a lot on federal clients. So that's United States federal clients, although I've done a work with nonprofits and for-profit organizations as well. Much of my book of business is in with federal government.
That's interesting. I mean, I was thinking about that in connection with some of the work we're doing. We've been lucky to be working with of those government clients, but also small, medium-sized enterprises. But one thing we're seeing across the board is that a lot of these clients have what is essentially a case management problem. Is that something that resonates with you as well?
Indeed. One of the things I have perhaps focused on are federal clients that have a mission that's about serving customers. And anytime you have a mission that's serving customers, whether they're applicants for benefits or people that are trying to have something that like manages that interaction, and that's in my mind a case management problem. So several of my clients have focused on implementing state of the art case management solutions, whether that's a COTS solution or a custom developed solution. Many of my federal clients are leaning into custom developed solutions using agile approaches. So they're trying to create sort of solutions that are delivering more quickly and are not, things that one waits for, more than a year to do. So definitely case management's part of the challenge that they have. And one of the things I think they have been challenged by is determining like customize that needs to be, even when they're adopting COTS solutions like a Salesforce, they want to customize that a lot to their existing problem. And then it's a process question, right? So do you re-engineer a COTS solution to support an existing process, Or do you revise your process to support what's out of the box in terms of a COTS solution? And then in the custom world, that's an same problem. They have different, local office will be doing something differently from other local offices. So they have to decide how much of that variation they want to build in and how much of that variation they want to build out so that then they have a standard process that everybody can wrap their heads around. Yeah, so case management's definitely something that we've leaned into. We do a lot of requirements around that, a lot of strategy around that, as well as implementation work. We help them roll these things out, wrap change management processes around it, do some training around it so that once it's rolled out, actually users are using it.
Absolutely. And we've seen a lot of those things you're bringing up are really interesting. We've been seeing that as well. So
Yeah, and so you're talking about the people and the processes, and if you can just drill down a little bit more on that, because it sounds like you've got clients who maybe are paper-based and they want to shift to something digital, or they've got a process that's onerous and you want to help them think about how they can get to something that's easier to use. Is that fair?
Yes, that's right on. And especially the concept about moving to digital processes. In our real world experience, most of our processes have moved to digital, right? So
Right.
if you go for a loan for a home or buy a new house, all of those documents are now digital, right? And so our clients who have historically managed their processes using paper, and in fact, they use paper as a way to control their processes. They know where things are because their paper's in a queue, or they have evidence that something's waiting for them because there's a file on their desk. So thinking about how to make a process that's paper digital is not just about the data that one's moving around, but also the steps themselves. Like, how do you know you have work ready? You have to create a digital queue. How do you know if the interaction with the file, the electronic file, is as easy to do as it would be physically? So people have a lot of experience flipping through files and they know where to find stuff. Well, a digital experience is very different. Like, how do I find things readily so
Right.
that my process is as efficient? So that movement to digital seems very powerful, but also comes with some implications for how do we make sure we wrap the right skills around this. So maybe we've included a bunch of automation in our digitizing a process that takes away some of those onerous tasks that are sort of redundant and not helpful. Well, that may mean that we have to retrain people. Like, what are they doing now? It may mean we have to skill up people, as in maybe the jobs are changing a lot. Maybe I'm no longer actually doing data entry, but instead now I'm actually evaluating the specifics of the data that's already in the case. And those ramifications of moving to more and more automation and more digital processes means we've got to be really thoughtful about how we wrap first processes, second people, around something to actually realize an integrated solution.
And
I don't know if that helps, but
it does, and so I'm just drilling down even a little further. When people work with you, what are some of the artifacts that they might end up like? Depending on the circumstance, I could see that there would be multiple different approaches, and I'm curious as to what some of those might be.
yeah, so it depends where we are in our movie, so to speak. If we're at the start of a transformation, we might create like a strategic direction. We want to focus on work streams of work that include strategy, like how are we going to implement this, processes, what processes are affected? Do we need to think about SOPs? The people side, do we need to think about change management or training or communication? The strategy is often where we start. Sometimes if we're halfway through the transformation, we'll be focused instead on creating process maps. And that could be coming from more of like a journey map point of view, where we're inquiring about how people are currently interacting with systems and other people around a specific problem and their pain points, and identifying like what's working, what's not working, so that we can include that as part of our improved processes or automation. We might do a to-be process map, which is, all right, if we imagine the future and we really, could think about it any way we like, what would that look like? How could we take out these pain points, and how could we imagine using people a little bit differently? Other artifacts that I think are sort of typical of our delivery are change management related. So stakeholder analysis, change management frameworks, communication strategies, and then actual products that are communicatable. like a bulletin. Here's what's coming to you soon, or look forward to. And then we do a lot of what I would describe as sort of facilitated conversations, focus groups around developing these process maps, focus groups around how's the system working for you? How would you adapt or adjust it? What would we be doing differently? So we do, I think, a lot of conversation with people as we're really trying to lean into the sort of let's design these systems and processes around people.
That's great. And yeah, there's this emphasis on the people, right? That seems very important. And earlier you had mentioned implementation, and we haven't talked about tools yet. At the same time, I know that some clients, they're very tool focused. And so what you're describing, at the point that you're describing, they don't have the tools yet. And so what would you say to maybe a more tool focused client that they're going to get out of your piece of the process?
So because we're not the tool provider or the developer, we're not the technologists that do the work, I think what we help our client do is sometimes we do an analysis of their requirements to help support like a gap fit approach. So if your requirements are X and solutions like Salesforce or Oracle provide these kinds of solutions, what's a better fit? And you can do a gap fit of that. And then we can help make recommendations about the tool selection. But because we're also not the implementers, we can help make sure that what's wrapped around the implementation are some checks and balances. How do we make sure that we've got the right users doing user testing, for example? How do we make sure that we've got the right people involved in writing the SOPs? When I roll out this new system and software, I need to make sure I can use it. So we're the sort of the glue that makes sure that that software is used and people know how to use it appropriately.
What's the handoff then between you and the people who maybe do the development work or the providers of those tools? And do you have a role with your clients in getting them from completing the process with you to their final destination?
I think more and more we are trying to do integrated teams such that there isn't a handoff. So waterfall development used to be lots of milestones where you develop a product and then you kind of give it to somebody else to go implement. More and more agile approaches suggest that we're doing this together. So that suggests that you might have an integrated team that includes somebody like us as a business analyst or as a scrum master or as a project lead or a product manager, as well as the developers, and then as well as our clients, so that we're all doing it together. And that makes sure that we're all communicating in a similar language. We all have strengths that we're bringing to the table. And the idea is to leverage all that strengths to ask really smart questions. So, for example, let's say you're looking at a new requirement and the dev team says to you, that's going to be really hard to do. I think that's a no. And then the conversation becomes, well, what is possible here? How could we adjust our requirement, or how could we adjust something that's happening on the software side to meet that requirement, so that we can come up with a common understanding about how to implement it. So I think we try not to have as many handoffs. We try to work collaboratively. And then I think the conversation about moving clients from strategy to implementation is also becoming more and more natural as lean into agilely doing things, because essentially we're trying to experiment. We're trying to try things on such that perhaps we've identified a particular process that we want to experiment with. So we roll it out with a small audience. We try it on, we adapt it, we adjust it, then we make it a national thing, and then we continue to adapt or adjust. So the line between solutioning and implementation seems to be blurring, and I think in a positive way, such that there are more immediate feedback cycles so that you can find out what's working, what's not working, and then your solutioning continues to iteratively kind of roll out with that feedback in mind.
Who brings those other people into the picture? Like if you're part of a team, are you picking those other team members or is the client?
Typically it's the client. And then, of course, you can imagine there's a teeny bit of a team building opportunity because we've got new stakeholders coming to the table that have to work together. So one of the things that we have to really work carefully to do is establish roles and responsibilities, establish team norms, and there's the typical sort of storming, forming, norming processes that normally happen. But I think the power of that integrated team is worth that investment. And I think our clients do too. So they value our clients value collaboration. Like this is one of the key things that they ask for when we're working with them is, show us how you can collaborate with others so that we can be sure that together you guys can develop something that meets our needs.
That's great. And I mean, as you're describing that, I just get excited when I hear these things.
Right?
You can imagine, I'm imagining that the team is excited too. We would hope everybody's excited. And that's something, so I want to talk about how to keep that excitement going, if you will, because sometimes what we see is people who get very excited about the technology. They really want to improve their digital maturity and things start off well, but somewhere along the way, they may lose they may lose momentum and they may suffer from some inertia in terms of how their project is going. And you check back in with them a couple of years later and they're sort of like, well, we didn't quite get along as far as we wanted. And I think you've seen a lot of these projects. Do you have some insights into what maybe bumps in the road that people and organizations could be hitting on that front?
I think you're right on to the ebbs and flow of a large project, which is, it's pretty typical that everybody's really jazzed at the start of the process and the project. And then as you get into the day-to-day kind of grind of it's hard and things don't always go right. And we don't have all the things we need, or perhaps we're slipping schedule or scope is misunderstood. And then that is where energy flags and it's a little bit harder to bring it across the finish line. I think one of the things that has improved in my mind this problem is this whole concept of let's deliver bite-sized chunks. So let's figure out like what we can actually deliver soon, and as soon as, I don't know, 30 days that actually provides some kind of business value, and we can begin to experiment with it. And that tends to be very reinforcing because you're seeing some success, you're getting some more immediate feedback, and then you actually are making a baby step towards some future step, right? So, and it could be that that's all that's necessary so that success happened, even if it wasn't as maybe big as one imagined, you made some forward progress. So I feel like the concept of agilely developing and rolling out all sorts of things, business processes, people changes, as well as processes, is a good way to manage this problem of change is hard, it takes time, and you have to figure out how to continue to maintain the momentum. I think the other thing that has to happen is something I'm not sure we're always great at. I don't think we do enough celebration of successes. And I think we need to like do that more purposefully, and brag about it and communicate it so that everybody's like, wow, we just delivered something really cool, to maintain that momentum, because these projects are long and they're hard. So actually making sure we celebrate those successes and brag about it seems like an important way to keep that sort of energy up. I think it is always helpful if our leaders continue to make sure they are saying out loud, good job, bragging about the accomplishments. Like I think we need that leadership top flight cover to keep up that momentum as well. Because sometimes when leaders change, then the project by definition becomes a different project. Sure. And that's in and of itself one of the barriers that we've discovered. Then you have to rebuild them, get going again.
Absolutely. And it's as you say, it's an interesting balancing act. The reality is sometimes these projects are hard, but you want to recognize that within that, there's still a lot of successes that are occurring on the ground. So yeah, that's really valuable insight. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So for people who are motivated to undertake a digital transformation, let me see if we've heard you correctly. So it can be a challenge, but you want to go from paper to digital. You want to go from complicated to sensible and straightforward. Is don't jump in and start looking for a tool. I think it's look at the people and the process, and then bringing people to work together in an agile way, celebrating success along the way. Did I capture it?
John, that's pretty impressive. From a lot of words to distill it down. Yes, sir.
And what am I missing? What else would you want to add to that?
So one of the other things that I've begun to start thinking about is the future of work, right? So with all the AI that we're all reading about and how that might change how we put people against work, I think we're going to have to be really thoughtful as advisors to help our clients think about how they can be resilient to change, right? So change is a given, right? That is by definition, that's a given. And it seems to be accelerating. More and more digital change is happening faster and faster. And so I think as we automate more and more processes, we've got to be really thoughtful about what that means for resiliency. and robustness to handle what change might be coming up. So we can't take so much of the work away from people that if the work changed, nobody would have the skills to actually do the work, right? And I think we've got to be thoughtful about that balance. I don't think we're prepared for all the things that may come to us. And so making sure there's people who have unique skills, as in something that a machine can't do, which is adaptive, logical, like what happened? What do we do next? Like a machine can't do that. So I think we need to make sure we keep people enough in our equation when we talk about digitizing processes that we can be resilient and robust for what's going to change. So I'm just leaning into that concept of, I don't think we can take the people out of the problem set. And I think some designers, developers are leaning into all right, we don't need people for this. And that seems, it's like we're not going to be resilient for all the change that's coming to us soon.
That's a good point. And it's a theme that we often talk about, is how technology can augment the capabilities of people, exactly, as opposed to replacing them. But one thing that we also consider is the legitimate concerns or fears that employees might have about what is all this going to change, not just mean for the organization, but for them. And have you seen good ways to put employees at ease?
Yeah, and I think the what's in it for me question is key to any change management effort and really any adoption of a system. And so I think that's another place where involving employees and thinking about what the pain points are and focusing and solutioning around those pain points is useful. And then I think involving employees and thinking about what's next is really important. So if part of my job has gone away, let's say the data entry's gone away, all right, so what do we imagine next? How could we use your skill set? Where else could we apply that? And then I think thinking about offering opportunities to reskill or upskill is going to be part of how we solve that problem, so that people feel like there's a place for them, even if it's doing something a little bit differently, that they feel like there's a place for them and they have faith that they're not being essentially supplanted. Mm-hmm.
This has been great. Jen, any last questions?
No, not at this moment, although I hope the conversation will continue. This has been really, really lovely to talk with you about these things. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm delighted to chat you up about these.
Super. And so again, if people wanted to connect with you, you're at the McMenamin Consulting Group, and you are based in?
Near Washington, D.C. Yes.
Right. Perfect. So, Kris, thank you. We really appreciate it. And let's stay in touch.
Thank you. Looking forward to more. See you soon. Bye.